Hello and welcome to our very first AGS Live. I'm Erin Moore, a Senior Executive of Global Solutions with AGS Global Solutions, coming to you live from our Jacksonville location today. We're really excited to have you all join us today to learn about Walgreens' journey from a self-managed MSP to an AGS MSP. But before we get started, let's just go over a couple of housekeeping items. As of right now, all of the lines are muted. However, we do want to make sure that it's interactive and you get all of your questions answered. So feel free to add any of your questions to the chat area and we'll do what we can to answer them during our time together, and we'll leave a few minutes at the end. And anything we don't get to, we'll make sure to follow up with you after our time together today. So we have a great lineup of panelists. We're really excited to have all of you join us. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll let you each introduce yourselves. Derek, how about we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Fuchs. I'm the AGS program executive for Walgreens. I'm responsible for all the contingent labor that flows through Walgreens, through the Walgreens program. I've been in the staffing industry for over 25 years and with AGS for the past 7. I bring a unique perspective because I started out as a staffing recruiter and moved into a staffing salesperson and spent 17 years as a staffing salesperson. 14 of them, I was a President's Club member, which is something I'm proud about. But as a supplier, I sold to accounts that had good MSPs and others that were not so good. And my focus is ensuring that at Walgreens, we have a best-in-class program, first and foremost for Walgreens, but then also for our supplier partners as well. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for joining, and we look forward to sharing our story.
So glad to have you. Thank you. Tiffany, how about we turn it over to you?
Thanks, Erin. My name is Tiffany Bone. I'm a director on the Rapid Implementation team within WBA Procurement. That's for indirect procurement. And my relation to AGS and contingent labor at Walgreens as I led the implementation of the managed service provider within Walgreens from a procurement perspective.
Great, thanks for joining, Tiffany. And Jignesh, how about you?
Hello, good afternoon, folks. My name is Jignesh Patel. I'm a director for the Contingent Labor Analytics and Governance team here at Walgreens. Been with the company a little over 12 years now and have had the opportunity to work with various types of contingent labor, strategic consultants, outsourcing, temporary labor, et cetera, et cetera. And I was lucky enough to have been chosen for implementing VMS for Walgreens in 2013, and then having partnered with procurement in implementing an MSP in 2019.
Great, thanks, Jignesh. We're really excited to hear your story, particularly since you go back to the beginning of this journey. So actually, maybe we could start there. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the initial program and why Walgreens had decided to go self-managed when you started this journey.
Sure. So Erin, let me take you back to pre-2013 timeframe. Walgreens has always had a professional services category within procurement, but back then they were primarily involved only when we were bringing in new vendors and they would help us dot the I's, cross the T's from a legal perspective. Beyond that, it was up to the business units to work with the vendors on the pricing. The challenge with that model was that there was no central oversight or consistency regarding, who brought in the talent and at what price. There were no general SLAs or KPIs for the vendors either, or the business unit implemented something that worked for their particular business unit. One of the key shortcomings of this model was that, there were two groups that could be paying two different rates for that same resource or for that same function. Given the lack of central governance or the sharing of rates between the BUs. Walgreens additionally also did independent consultants or 1099s back then, so that brought in a whole different level of complexity. So fast forward to early 2013, given these savings opportunities and the opportunity to also rationalize our vendor base, we started exploring a VMS solution. Initially, we decided to go with a self-funded model, and therefore the idea of self-managing the program to keep the costs low.
And tell us a little bit about how the program worked. Did you have a dedicated program team, or how were you managing that?
Sure. So we started out this program by piloting with our enterprise PMO. We wanted to keep this small as we kick the tires and check the plumbing on this implementation, right? Also, in order to keep the costs low, again, going back to the self-funded model, we had a skeletal team supporting this program. Later on, a couple of years in, we found out that this model also had its own set of challenges. The process was, let me take a step back. We talk about whenever we implement a new program, we look at the people, process, and technology. We had the people part, we had the technology part. What was missing was the process piece, and that's when we started, exploring, looking at an MSP that could help us with the process piece of this model. Given the skeletal staff, it was hard to service every business unit that had the need for contingent labor. And then eventually it had sort of become a bottleneck. People were going around this program and continuing to work directly with the vendors. So, we recognized this at that point, and, we started looking out for a better model that would work, given that now we had the VMS in place.
And how did you spark that interest to move to the MSP? How did that work?
Sure. Given some of these shortcomings, right? That's when procurement started looking into this and looking at potentially an MSP that could help us with a staffing model that would work, given some of these challenges internally, right? We had to get all the rates under control. We had to implement job descriptions and rates across the entire BU. So that is one of the primary drivers. And given that now we also had an option to switch over to a vendor-funded model, that changed the finances on this particular program and gave us the opportunity to start exploring further into whether an MSP would make sense at this point.
Now, Tiffany, you were pretty involved in that transition. What process did you go through to make your final decision on moving forward with the MSP?
Yeah, so we knew that the team lacked the in-house expertise to grow a sophisticated program and get the user adoption. So like Jignesh said, we explored moving to a managed service provider because Walgreens did not have the centralized operations to manage the needs within the organization for staff augmentation itself. That created a very fragmented approach, and how the business unit managed contingent labor resources really caused the inability to scale effective cost controls across the organization. So we built a business case first around developing an opportunity assessment, along with reviewing how Walgreens can transition to the new, I guess at that time, a newer industry standard of migrating to contingent labor programs with an MSP. So our procurement team then conducted a formal request for proposals, an RFP, where capabilities and commercials were reviewed, benchmarked against a number of different MSP providers, so managed service providers. The RFP consisted of a competitive bid process and in-person finalist presentations. And ultimately, AGS Global Solutions was chosen as the best partner for Walgreens to move forward with implementing a program.
I know that was a pretty rigorous process, and you guys spent quite a bit of time on that. What other departments and groups did you get involved in that process to get the buy-in?
Yeah, so I was not involved in that RFP. I know Jignesh's team was, but typically from a RFP perspective, bringing in IT, finance, in this case, our accounting shared services was involved. This dealt with, paying all of these suppliers. So we're bringing them from Walgreens paying them directly to AGS holding treasury. So really whatever business unit could think of, risk, IT, legal, and all of our business operations, along with the second part of our implementation was with the distribution centers. So that was a large lift as well. Jignesh, any that I missed there for involvement?
No, I think you got them all.
Is there anything the two of you can share about your thoughts on or what really compelled you to make that decision and make the decision that you did to go with AGS?
Yeah, really, from even a managed service provider as a whole, standardized rates across the business. Jignesh mentioned that was a huge one. The market insights and robust analytics that we didn't have previously ourselves. Standardizing quarterly business reviews. So with some of our smaller spend suppliers, maybe we weren't doing those quarterly business reviews. We're ensuring that the same controls and reviews are being done across the supplier pool then.
So Jignesh, since you've got that perspective of the original program and now, what can you tell us has changed from a user experience, hiring manager, supplier? Have you seen, with the transition to the MSP?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, right? I mean, it's become a partnership which is seamless to the internal business users, right? Whether they reach out to my team, whether they reach out to Allegis directly, it's one team that is helping the user experience. So from that aspect, we've tried to keep it as seamless as possible. Anybody that is being reached out to, we go back with a consistent response and make sure that user experience is always at the forefront, right? So that's from a user experience perspective. If I were to, from a Walgreens perspective, what has this relationship brought for us, right? We were, from a single BU having a rate cards and JDs established to now the entire Walgreens enterprise, including DCs, including Puerto Rico, having a standardized rate card, standardized job descriptions, right? And split up further by the market type, like New York, LA kind of a market, a Chicago kind of a market, Seattle, and then some of the rural and sub-rural areas, right? So we have a whole vast consistent range of rates that we can tap into. On top of that, right, now that IT is onboarded, we have onshore, nearshore, and offshore rates as well, right? So given that complexity, there is no way we could have done this internally just by Walgreens working on this program, right? So that is the huge gap that AGS helped us bridge. Secondly, it's the market insights, the analytics, the access to an analytics platform that we have where we can tap in and look at who are we spending the most with? Who is the best performing vendor? Where are we having challenges, right? Who's giving us the best rates? So just the wealth of knowledge and the data that we have at our fingertips. Standardized QBRs. Different BUs did standardized QBRs with their vendors. Now we have a centralized QBR that happens every quarter where we look at our spends, again, which vendors are performing, which are not, which ones need to be swapped in, which ones need to be swapped out, which ones are going on, for the lack of a better term, performance improvement plan. But this is what we have been able to accomplish. And then lastly, I would say is the annual rate reviews, where Allegis goes out to the market, looks at businesses of our size, looks at the kind of talent Walgreens is looking at, and gives us recommendations in terms of which rates need to go down, which rates would be climbing up, just so that we can stay competitive in the landscape and land the best talent here at Walgreens.
That's great that you guys have had such a great experience and made so much progress. You've talked a lot about rates and that being an important part of your program. Have you been able to realize cost savings, and how are you guys quantifying that within your program?
Yeah, so Walgreens has been able to realize significant cost savings in this program. A lot of that has to do with the visibility, right? Ensuring that resources are being charged the right cost codes and the right budgets. that really wouldn't have been there without the MSP rollout and really trying to identify where those baseline costs were and ensure that they're hitting the right areas. Partially attributable to the standardization of rates, as well as all those process improvements that we've realized throughout the program.
To build on to
That's
what
great.
Tiffany mentioned, one of the key metrics that we have been able to tap into is the overtime. How many folks are charging overtime, and which is this specific to a certain business unit? Is this specific to a certain manager, right? We are able to get those kind of insights, which have helped us, improve this program. And again, there are reasons for overtimes, and we just try to understand why is that happening versus just clamping down on it.
Mm-hmm.
And creating the visibility around that spend goes back to Jignesh's team, and then they're able to share that out with leaders across the organization.
Yeah, that's really important. Derek, it sounds like you've built quite the team to help Walgreens. Maybe you could share a little bit with us about what that team looks like today.
Yeah, definitely. So our program really started as a lift and shift of the current business that they had, just taking that and shifting it over to AGS. And so we started out with a dedicated group of 5 resources for Walgreens, with an additional group of subject matter experts like your technology folks, your supply-based team, invoicing, reporting, and market analytics. During the implementation, the ops manager and I were engaged, so it made things go smooth. But as we started to grow and add Walgreens business units, we grew our team as well. So we grew to a team of 8 additional, in addition to the subject matter experts. So it's been a good team, and we've got a lot of good experience on our team as well. So.
Great. I've heard nothing but great reviews from everyone so far. So with this team, how has the engagement with the hiring managers and your suppliers evolved from your original model?
So, is that a question for me? Yep, go ahead.
Have you heard any, Tiffany or Jignesh, any changes or in experience, from your hiring manager or the suppliers with their new program model?
Let me put it this way: it wasn't easy transition, right? People were used to working with the vendors that worked for them, right? I mean, they have had that relationship over the years. They knew how to work with the certain vendors. They knew the kind of talent that a certain manager wanted to bring to the table, right? But now we're working through a program. So we did go through a learning curve. There were challenges to adoption. There was pushback, but now I think they appreciate all the help that they are getting, the insights that they are getting from this program. From a vendor perspective too, right? From a transparency in terms of billing, transparency in terms of when are their checks coming versus getting lost somewhere, and having the ability to track down the payments, get them on timely manner, having somebody to talk to, right? From all of those perspectives, although it may sound tactical, but it still ends up being a better user experience for them. Anything I missed, Tiffany?
Yeah, I would add, from a procurement perspective, the visibility really better mitigates risk within our supplier network. We're able to expand and improve our partnerships, and we've really been able to increase our diverse supplier spend. So I know Derek and I spoke about, we have a great success story in growing our diverse supplier spend, and that would not have come without the help with our Allegis team, or it's definitely simplified it from procurement's perspective. So Derek, if you want to share some of the highlights of that program, I know we had talked about that previously.
Yeah. So when we started the lift and shift in 2019, we also started that discussion about creating an approach that would enable Walgreens to capitalize on tier 1 diversity supplier spend. So in parallel to that project, we also started to take a look at our overall supply base, and we started making some adjustments into the alignment of our suppliers that was also helpful and effective for our diverse suppliers, and gave them a better opportunity as well. So since implementing that, we actually implemented it in 2020. we've doubled our diverse supplier spend. So our goal is to continue to keep that a focus and advance that initiative by addressing some of the gaps that we've identified, whether that be particular groups or particular distribution lists, and making sure that we're continuing to keep our hiring managers engaged on that initiative and understand where our goals are.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I know you guys are tackling a lot of different things. Oh, did you have something?
Yeah. I just wanted to add one other thing. So one of the other things, just to tack on to what Jignesh was saying about our team, was we've aligned our team by business unit, which has also been helpful in that user experience and creating a better user experience from the start. There's still a lot to go, but being able to align our team by business unit has enabled them to create a better relationship and start to build that trust with the management team, because a lot of times from the cost savings perspective, they would go to one individual supplier, and that's how they would open up requirements. Now they're starting to give us the opportunity to open it up to a bigger group of the suppliers, so that we can be a little bit more cost competitive. So just something else to add.
That's great. You're probably reducing the rogue spend considerably. With the growth of the program, what kind of exposure is this getting within Walgreens? Is this becoming a more strategic category for you?
Yeah, I can speak to really the strategic nature of the category. We do have a policy around contingent labor now, so visibility within the organization is definitely executive level. Within procurement, the program definitely has support of our Chief Procurement Officer, which is Jim Townsend. The implementation of the program improved controls within P2P compliance, reporting, and regulatory requirements that we have. I would say it went from very transactional, and I know Jignesh used that word tactical, so that tactical transactional nature to strategic post-implementation. I think you can see that through everything we've talked about. Really a comprehensive visibility to the needs of our business units and to the data that we historically just didn't have before this program was implemented. So we're able to use that information to build the program roadmap and the strategy for improvements then.
Sorry, we just got a question for you, and it kind of ties right into this conversation, I think. Somebody is asking how you manage conflicts and resistance on adopting the MSP model from your stakeholders. I know you got policy, but policy goes so far.
that is probably a really good question for Jignesh, because he's in it day in and day out. I was within really for that implementation, and then until we got to that steady state. So Jignesh, if you want to jump in, go ahead. If you need help answering, I'm absolutely able to.
Sure, I'll take that one. So what we started out with, I mean, we were fortunate enough to know that this is something we are going to face resistance towards. So what we started out with is establishing a Walgreens-wide contingent labor policy. So this is a policy that was developed by HR, legal, procurement approved, and one of the key pieces of that policy is spelling out that anybody at Walgreens that needs to engage contingent labor needs to use the VMS MSP solution. There are no two ways around it. There is no workaround to this. Procurement implemented no PO, no pay. So there was basically, again, that was another way where we shut down any workarounds to this policy. And unless that labor was going through a VMS MSP, there's no way you're getting paid. So we had to make a couple of examples, but at that point, I think people understood, the vendors understood, and Walgreens managers understood. This is the way to do business.
Well, I'm sure it helps to have a good experience and get that word spreading around. Another question just came in. They're wanting to know why Walgreens chose to go with procurement managing the program, or to drive the MSP over talent acquisition. Either of you have any insight into that?
I mean, I can take a shot at this. This was this originated as a savings initiative versus it being more about the compliance and the process piece, right? So that's how it originated within procurement. But now, as I said, when we rolled out the contingent labor policy, there is the two executive sponsors for that policy are our Chief Procurement Officer and our Chief Human Resources Officer. So it started out as a savings opportunity initiated by procurement, but now there is buy-in from both these groups, and they both agreed to enforce these policies.
And it continues to be a partnership within the program.
I heard that the kind of along those lines that the program has also, you've seen some benefits coming from like reduced attrition and some other things like that. Any other benefits that you would share, that from this joint, relationship between talent acquisition and procurement that you're starting to see bubble up as, value out of your program so far?
Yeah, I would, besides attrition, I would say the value of supplier rationalization that Derek spoke to. When we can, build partnerships with our suppliers, increase the spend with them, improve the costs, and the risk and the quality of the candidates that are coming in, that's a win for our organizations, for procurement, for HR, for Allegis, and for our suppliers.
So, speaking of getting additional talent, I heard, we know that Walgreens has been instrumental in the efforts with COVID, from testing and vaccination and the long-term facility support. How is your program able to help you guys be more successful with those efforts?
Yeah, so I think our July update was over 25 million vaccines have been administered in stores and dedicated clinics since the first vaccines were approved in December, which is huge accomplishment for WBA. But our partnership between procurement and talent acquisition was important to realize that the opportunity to utilize our existing supplier network for the staffing needs. Allegis supported us in efforts to onboard temporary pharmacists and RNs for the vaccine administration. Originally, our talent acquisition team had considered releasing a scope of work to a couple companies to support the urgent need, until it was identified that we already had a number of suppliers within our network that we can source through, put them through our policy process, and really ensure that we were getting competitive rates through our supply network today. And we were able to use a number of diverse suppliers for that as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Glad that we could help with that effort. I know your program has come so far in the last couple of years. Jignesh, what advice do you have for anyone else that's getting ready to implement or considering implementing a program today?
Okay, all right. A couple things come to mind, right? First and foremost is take time to scope out the work that needs to be done. Be thorough. Be as thorough as you can be, because this is where it will pay off, is when you do your vendor selection, the KPIs that you would measure your vendors on, and through the contract negotiations, right? So take the time to scope out the work. Be very clear on the criteria used to measure the success of the program, and make sure you have executive buy-in for that, because that is what will truly help you understand how is the program performing. Is it successful? Is it meeting the needs? Is it unsuccessful? Because these are the measures that you will use to eventually gauge the success, right? Third, be very clear about how much spend is going to go through this program. Because the higher the cost, the lower will be your fees, right? So make sure you have a good handle on those costs that are going to flow through this program. Lastly, and most important, how will you support this program, right? What does that organization structure look like, right? Do you truly want to manage this internally? And if you want to manage this internally, do you truly have the headcount, or are you going to need incremental headcount to support this program? The benefits of supporting it externally is given that our program is now vendor funded, we didn't have to deal with the internal organization or request any incremental headcounts. The headcount got added more on the MSP side of the business, right? And they were able to ramp up depending on the need of the program or ramp down. As long as they are meeting our service levels, we are happy with that. So again, think about these pieces: the scope, the success criteria, the spend that is going to go through this program, and what would be that organizational structure that you would need to support this program once it's up and running. The last item that just came to my mind that I'd like to add is also think about the change management and training pieces, because those are super critical in terms of making this program a success. And be prepared to get pushback internally as well as externally. You will get pushback. Be prepared for it. And as I mentioned, one of the ways we overcame that was to implement a policy which clearly states you have to use this program. There are no ways around it. And then shut all the other avenues through which this kind of spend can go through.
Derek, how was your team able to help support some of those change management efforts? And when did that start in this process?
That started early on. As soon as suppliers came on, we trained suppliers. We had manager training as well. So it started right from the beginning. We also have intake calls. So we have consistent communication with managers around what their needs are. And then we bridge that gap with the suppliers. But it's really been a partnership, and that's what I could say right from the start. It's felt like a partnership with Walgreens and AGS, not as a vendor and client relationship. It's really been a true partnership, and that's what's really helped in the success of our program as well.
To hear. So what's next? What's on the roadmap to tackle next in your program?
Yeah, so we've been, with all the implementation efforts, obviously our program has been in setup mode for quite some time, and we've kind of closed the chapter on that as of recent. So we're turning our attention really to continue enhancing that user experience. First, of course, for the hiring managers at Walgreens, but also with our suppliers as well. We want our managers to understand the value of the program and to consistently see that AGS is a value add to their program. They're getting good quality candidates at the best price. And then from our supply base, we want them to see that partnership. And it's less about being in an MSP program, it's more about being in that partnership. So it's a two-way street there, and really kind of continuing to enhance that overall experience within the program.
How are you getting that feedback from the suppliers today?
So we have consistent meetings with supply base, especially the top suppliers right now. And then we'll continue to do voice of the customer supply surveys to get that feedback and gather that feedback from them. We also do a voice of the customer survey as well with Walgreens hiring managers to get their feedback to find out what their feedback is.
Jignesh, anything else on your wish list and roadmap?
No, I think Derek hit that nail on the head, right? It's truly, now that we are done with the onboarding pieces, to fine tune and make the user experience even better, and then continue to drive the savings that we have been able to extract so far. And hopefully look for other opportunities that we are working with procurement on. I'm unfortunately not ready to talk about it yet, but there are other avenues that we are exploring.
That's exciting. I know that Walgreens has made huge efforts and strides in driving inclusion and diversity within the enterprise. How are you guys able to bring that into your program today? Are you working to drive changes within the program?
Tiffany, can you take that one?
What was the question?
About, are you guys working to bring any of your corporate D&I initiatives into the program, into your contingent workforce program?
Yeah, so as Derek shared, so we're making extraordinary progress in improving the spend with diverse suppliers. Contingent workforce diversity, so within the resources, is a major push for this next year. So how do we ensure that within the candidate pool, we do have diverse candidates being brought forward? That's just something that we've been talking about and kind of our efforts for how would we tackle that in the next year. We're doing that from a corporate perspective for full-time employee recruiting, but now how do we bring that from a temporary labor initiative as well?
It's a sensitive topic, so it's definitely something that we want to make sure that our suppliers are educated on it and understand what those goals will be, and so that's some of the things that we'll be doing next year as well. So making sure that they're very aware of it.
Well, Derek, I'm sure it helps that you've got some internal resources to help you navigate that with Walgreens as well, so that's exciting. I know we're coming to the end of our time, so I want to make sure that if there are any additional questions out there that we make sure to get those answered. Then in the meantime, thank you, all three of you, for joining us today. We'll stay on for a few minutes just to make sure if there's anything remaining, but I do want to just make sure that everyone that may not have heard knows that CWS is coming back this year in person in Phoenix, and we're really excited to participate in that again. So if anyone has not registered, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to help get you registered for that. And be on the lookout for our next AGS Live sessions. We've got some exciting topics coming scheduled for the rest of the year, and we'll be live from a couple events that we have scheduled. So we're excited to bring that to you as well. Jignesh and Tiffany, any parting words? Any advice?
The only piece I would say is, I mean, you know, this program is, you reap the benefits when you take the pains up front, right? The implementation is never going to be easy, but the savings opportunities, the partnerships, and the user experience make it all worthwhile. So that's what I would leave the folks with.
And from me, like Jignesh said, the implementation, that is what I led with him, and the implementation is a huge lift. So I was a dedicated resource on it, and so do not underestimate an implementation for a program like this. If it's the size of Walgreens contingent labor program, I'm sure if it's smaller as well, do not underestimate the implementation of a program, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. So we've had some great success with the program.
It absolutely sets the foundation for your program moving forward, making sure you get that right. One question just came in, if you're willing to share, they're curious what VMS you selected and if you have any insight as to why.
Sorry, can you repeat that question, Erin?
Somebody is asking about the VMS that you selected, and if you, I guess well, we know that you selected that before you selected the MSP, but if you had any insight into if you want to share any of your insights into your VMS selection and why you selected them.
I don't know if we'd share the name of the VMS just because we are under contract with them. We didn't ask their permission to share who our VMS is. But Jignesh, did you want to share anything of why someone was chosen, if the VMS, specific VMS was chosen? I know that was back in 2013.
Sure. So a couple of things, right? One, as I mentioned, right, do your due diligence and understand why you want to do this program, right? What is it that you are trying to get out of this program? As long as you're very clear on that, that will definitely help you select the right VMS. Also consider the technical limitations or the integrations that you would need to work on post-implementation, and which VMS's capabilities would work with those integrations, because that's also very critical. For example, Walgreens IT has a project portfolio management solution that is implemented, and this MSP VMS combination had to interface with that, as well as with our HR systems and our financial accounting systems, right? It made it extremely complex. But again, having done that upfront will certainly help you select the right VMS. Every VMS has its own pros and cons, and basically going with your eyes wide open, knowing what you want out of it, will certainly help you pick the best one.
Great, thank you. One last, or I guess we've got two last questions here. What is, or how does the process work when you get approached by a new supplier that you don't have a history with? How is AGS helping you vet and onboard those new suppliers?
Yeah, so right now Walgreens is going through a supplier rationalization and optimization process. So, to bring on a new supplier, we do direct them to AGS so that we can look at, are there any gaps that we need to fill today? One of them being diverse suppliers. So we're currently looking for new diverse suppliers, but we do direct them to Allegis to go through a vetting process.
And are they broken out by different categories, or are you tiering them, or is it different by business unit? How are you guys managing that, if you don't mind?
We do break it out by the category. So whether it's IT, non-IT, light industrial for our distribution centers, and then they are compared to, what are the current suppliers we have today, and are there any gaps that we need to fill?
Great. Well, if there are any other questions, we'll make sure to follow up with those offline. The three of you, thank you so much for joining. I know this is hugely valuable to everyone going through this process, and we appreciate your time and your thoughts, and look forward to hearing more about your journey in the coming months and years. So thank you guys, and we will catch you soon.
Thanks, Erin.
Join us again. Have a great one. Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye.